Welcome to today's deep dive. And, I want to start by asking you, the listener, a question. You know that feeling when a brilliant, fleeting thought strikes you out of nowhere?
Oh, right, like a lightning bolt.
Exactly, like a
Yeah.
lightning bolt. And you scramble to capture it, right? You pull out your phone, your thumbs are just flying across the screen, but then autocorrect kicks in,
The dreaded autocorrect.
right? And it changes your profound, nuanced insight into just complete nonsense.
Yeah, and suddenly your focus shifts from saving this great idea to, fighting with your screen.
Exactly, it's infuriating. But what if you could bypass the keyboard entirely? Today, we are digging into a really fascinating document from the AI for 55 Plus initiative. It's powered by Pro Computer.
Right, the flyer titled The Pen and the Processor, Digitizing Handwritten Thoughts.
Yes, and honestly, it suggests the ultimate productivity hack for the modern age isn't like a new app at all, it's just a ballpoint pen.
Right.
Yeah, which as someone who loves to learn but hates when tech gets in the way, I find incredibly exciting.
It is a really compelling premise. And, while the source material is explicitly styled as a flyer for a senior audience, the 55 plus demographic, the problem it addresses is, well, it's incredibly universal.
Oh, for sure. We all deal with it.
Right, because the cognitive friction caused by our devices, that gap between how fast we can think and how fast we can type, that's a fundamental challenge for anyone in the modern information age.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because before we even get to the artificial intelligence solution, we need to look at the core problem outlined in this text.
The physical and mental disconnect, right?
Yeah, exactly. Between our brains and our keyboards. And the flyer is actually surprisingly poetic about this. It points out that when we write by hand, quote, our thoughts flow beautifully through the tip of a pen.
It's just a great image.
It really is. But when we type, we are dealing with clunky keyboards, slow typing speeds, and those notorious autocorrect changes.
It's just constant friction.
Yes. I mean, think about it like this. Typing out a complex thought often feels like driving a high-speed sports car. That's your brain bumper-to-bumper traffic.
The keyboard being the traffic.
Exactly. You're constantly hitting the brakes, checking your blind spots for typos, shifting gears. It's exhausting. But writing by hand, that feels like cruising on an open highway.
I love that analogy. And what's fascinating here is that the text doesn't just treat this as a minor everyday annoyance.
No, it really elevates the issue.
It does. It frames it as a significant structural barrier to creativity. It states that these digital interruptions literally, quote, derail your train of thought and your best ideas.
Which is so true.
And if we look at the mechanics of human cognition, that makes perfect sense. When you're typing and you have to stop to fix a typo, your brain is forced into a hard context switch.
Right, you're dropping right out of that idea zone.
Exactly. You move from the high-level, abstract, creative thinking down to the low-level, highly mechanical task of correcting syntax.
And that context switch just costs you an immense amount of cognitive energy.
It does. Every single time you look at the screen and see a red squiggly line under a word, your brain halts the creative process to fix the error.
The physical act of typing can literally cost you your aha moments. Because your mind just, well, it can't wait for your fingers to catch up.
It's a real bottleneck.
Which is such a tragedy for anyone who considers themselves a writing person. If your brain works best with a physical pen in hand, you shouldn't be penalized by the modern world.
Right, you shouldn't have to choose.
But I have to play devil's advocate for a second here. Because the reality is, we undeniably live and work in a digital ecosystem.
We do. Everything is digital.
Right. We need our notes to be digital so we can email them, search them, edit them later. A physical piece of paper doesn't do you much good if you need to share that idea with a colleague across the country.
Or if you want to pull up that specific thought in a database 6 months from now.
Exactly. So how do we bridge that gap without just resigning ourselves to the keyboard?
Well, this is where the flyer transitions from identifying the problem to revealing the modern tool designed to fix it.
And that tool is modern artificial intelligence.
Specifically highlighting Google Gemini, the text explains that AI can step in to handle all those tedious typing tasks.
Completely freeing you up.
Right. So your thoughts can continue to flow naturally on paper. It's really about letting the technology adapt to your preferred analog workflow.
Rather than forcing your human brain to adapt to the rigid structure of the technology. I love that.
It's a complete paradigm shift.
But, okay, I can hear you, the listener, offering some very reasonable pushback right now. You might be thinking, wait a minute, if we are moving from physical paper to digital text, Doesn't that mean we have to buy some fancy digital smart pen?
Or an expensive document scanner.
Yeah. I know for years people tried those digital pens that required like special dotted paper, and it was always a clunky experience
It really was. And that history of clunky gadgets is exactly why this specific document is so compelling.
because it's different now.
Very different. The genius of this approach is its absolute accessibility. You don't need any new hardware.
Not at all.
None. You don't need a specialized scanner, no expensive smart pen. The bridge between the physical paper and the digital world is simply the smartphone camera that's already in your pocket.
Wow, so the phone camera just acts as the eye for the AI.
That's all it takes.
Okay, so the journey of the idea starts on paper. The flyer encourages you to write out your thoughts, letters, or notes, just like you normally would.
Right. Step one, just write.
And the text specifically notes, and I actually really love this detail, don't worry about being perfectly neat.
Which is so freeing.
It is, but I have to push back a little here. If my handwriting is basically a chaotic scribble that even I struggle to read an hour later, how can an AI possibly decipher it?
It's a valid concern.
Right. Isn't there a massive risk of the AI just hallucinating entirely new ideas because it misreads my chicken scratch?
That is a fantastic question. And it gets to the heart of why this tech is fundamentally different from what we had 10 or 20 years ago.
You mean like the old scanners?
Yeah, exactly. To understand why it doesn't just hallucinate wildly, we have to look at the difference between old school OCR optical character recognition and modern large language models like Gemini.
Right, because OCR has been around forever. You'd scan a document in the late 90s, and it was always full of weird errors.
Exactly. Old OCR systems were purely visual and highly rigid. They looked at the shape of a single letter in a vacuum.
Oh, I see.
So if you wrote an E but the ink smudged, the OCR might look at that shape and think, well, that looks like an @ symbol.
And it would just drop an @ symbol right into the middle of your word.
Exactly. It had no understanding of what the document was actually about. But modern AI models use context and predictive modeling.
So they're reading the whole thing.
Right. They don't just look at shapes. They read the entire sentence to figure out what a messy word should be based on the surrounding context.
Oh, wow. Okay, so if I write, I took my dog for a walk in the park, and the word dog is an absolute mess of scribbles.
The AI knows you probably didn't take your log or your bog for a walk.
Right. It uses the statistical probability of the English language to figure it out.
Precisely. It's interpreting natural, messy human scrawl by understanding the intent behind the words.
That is wild. So you genuinely can just write, let the ideas flow without editing yourself, and then use your cell phone to snap a picture.
Step 2, snap a clear picture. The AI is doing heavy contextual lifting, not just shape matching.
That makes a lot of sense. So I've dumped my messy thoughts on paper, snapped a picture. In the past, this is where the friction returned because I'd have to figure out how to import it into some clunky software.
Right, the transfer process was always a headache.
How does the AI actually intercept this image now?
Well, the flyer lays out the upload process for Gemini. You open the app on your phone or computer, and it provides a very specific visual cue.
Okay, what is it?
It tells you to look for the little plus symbol next to the box where you normally type your messages. You just tap that plus symbol to upload the photo of your handwriting.
Now, here's where it gets really interesting to me. It's fascinating that Google didn't invent a completely new interface for this.
No, they didn't.
They piggybacked on the universal user experience of attaching a photo to a text message. It's the exact same motion you'd use to send a picture of your dog to a friend.
Which is incredibly smart design.
Right, especially for a demographic that might be intimidated by new software, like the 55-plus audience this flyer targets. It's practically a Trojan horse for AI adoption.
It really is. One of the biggest hurdles in tech adoption is the cognitive load required to learn a new interface.
But here, they're using muscle memory people already have.
Exactly. By using a paradigm that most people are already completely familiar with, they eliminate that barrier entirely. You don't have to navigate a complex set of menus.
You just hit the plus sign.
That's it.
But uploading the photo isn't quite enough, right? I mean,
Yeah.
the computer sees an image, but it doesn't intrinsically know what we want from it.
Right, it needs instructions.
It could describe the photo, it could translate it, critique it. How do we bridge the gap between providing a static photo and getting an editable document back?
This is step 3, the prompting stage. And the flyer tells the user to talk to Gemini using simple instructions.
Okay.
It says, do it just as if you were talking to a human typewriter or a helpful friend.
A human typewriter. I love that phrasing.
It even provides a specific example prompt to use. It says, to ask, could you recognize my handwriting and type it out into a document for further editing?
Or I guess you could just say, please type this out.
Exactly. Keep it simple.
I really want to pause on that specific phrase, though. Just as if you were talking to a human typewriter. Using AI is no longer about programming.
No, not at all.
It's about delegating. You aren't typing in lines of code, you're just politely asking a favor.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, this represents a massive, fundamental shift in the entire history of human-computer interaction.
It really does.
For decades, we have had to translate our human desires into computer speak. We had to learn specific command lines, specific syntax for search engines.
Drop-down menus, formatting rules.
Right. We had to bend our minds to understand how the machine structured information. But with tools like Gemini, the paradigm has entirely flipped.
The machine bends to us now.
Yes. The computer has finally learned how to understand plain, unstructured human language. You don't have to learn how to speak to the machine anymore.
Because the machine has learned how to listen to you. Calling it a human typewriter perfectly encapsulates that historical shift.
It does. It democratizes the technology completely.
Okay, so we've written our note, snapped the picture, hit the plus button, and politely asked Gemini to type it out. What's step 4?
Step 4 is review and copy. The text states that within seconds, literally seconds, Gemini will provide you with a beautifully typed version of your handwritten notes.
That's basically magic.
It feels like it. You review it, copy it, and paste it wherever you need it.
But there's a very important caveat in this final review stage that we need to examine closely, right?
Yes, absolutely. The flyer explicitly states, quote, because AI is not always perfect, you should review the output to make sure all the words are accurate.
Which is fair.
It acknowledges that despite the contextual power of large language models, if your handwriting is incredibly messy, or if the lighting in the photo is poor, the AI might misread a word.
And this is where we have to address the very real fears and practical realities of using this kind of tech.
Especially for the 55-plus audience.
Exactly. I can easily see someone who didn't grow up with a smartphone being absolutely terrified of making a mistake.
Oh, tech paralysis is very real.
It is. I remember watching an older relative completely freeze up using a tablet because he was genuinely terrified that tapping the wrong icon would somehow delete his entire photo library.
Or wipe out his bank account.
Yes. So how important is that specific reassurance in the text? How does this document handle that anxiety?
It handles it brilliantly. It is arguably the most important psychological component of the entire initiative.
Really?
Yes. The text doesn't just say expect mistakes. It provides a mental framework for how to handle them.
What's the framework?
It advises that if the AI makes a mistake, you should simply give Gemini feedback, quote, just as if you were talking to a human secretary who did the typing for you.
Oh, wow. Reframing the AI as a human secretary who occasionally misreads a word. That completely changes the emotional stakes of the interaction.
Doesn't it? It's psychologically brilliant. By using the human secretary metaphor, it normalizes the error.
It takes the pressure off.
Right. It tells the user, this isn't a catastrophic system failure.
Wow.
And more importantly, it's not your fault for doing it wrong.
It's just a simple, everyday misunderstanding between you and your assistant.
Exactly. You don't have to panic. You just type back, oh, actually, in that second paragraph, that word is supposed to be thought, not though.
That is so empowering.
And furthermore, the initiative's messaging explicitly states a rule that I think everyone needs to hear. You cannot break the AI by experimenting with it.
You cannot break the AI. Wow. I feel like we all need to internalize that.
Everyone does.
Seriously, forget just the 55-plus demographic. I know plenty of young professionals who are intimidated by artificial intelligence because they think there's a right way to prompt it.
And if they do it wrong, they think they'll break the system or get banned.
Exactly.
And that fear of breaking the machine is the #1 thing that causes that tech paralysis. By explicitly removing that anxiety, the flyer encourages a mindset of playful experimentation.
Which is how we actually learn.
Precisely. Playful experimentation is exactly how true, lasting learning happens. When you aren't afraid of breaking the tool, you are much more likely to explore the boundaries of what it can actually do for you.
You start testing it like, can it read my cursive? Can it read my grocery list written in Sharpie on a napkin?
Yes. And that is when technology goes from being a daunting chore to a magical utility.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? If we pull this entire deep dive together, we're looking at a technology that fundamentally alters our creative process.
It removes the bottleneck.
It does. For so long, we've had to compromise. We've had to cram our natural, free-flowing thoughts through the rigid, restrictive bottleneck of a plastic keyboard.
Enduring the constant friction of typos and autocorrect.
Right. But this flyer from the AI for 55 Plus initiative proves that we've crossed a threshold. Technology has finally advanced to the point where it can adapt to our natural, messy human habits.
Instead of the other way around.
Exactly. The next time you have a great idea or a long, heartfelt message to write, you don't have to open a blank digital document and stare at a blinking cursor.
You can bypass the keyboard entirely.
You can pick up your favorite pen, let your thoughts flow onto the page without worrying about neatness, and simply let AI handle the heavy lifting of digitizing it.
And this raises an important question about how we value our own thought processes.
How?
Well, for anyone who identifies as a learner or a creative, this is incredibly empowering. Your brilliant aha moments, those sudden bursts of insight, they never have to be lost to the friction of modern devices again.
You can capture the raw genius on paper at the speed of thought.
Right. Secure in the knowledge that digitizing it, sharing it, and archiving it is just a photograph away.
It beautifully bridges the gap between analog creativity and digital utility.
It proves that the future of technology doesn't have to be entirely digital. It can be a seamless blend of the physical and the virtual.
I love that. And that actually leaves us with a rather profound thought to end on for today.
Oh.
Think about those lightning bolt ideas we talked about at the very beginning of this deep dive.
Huh?
The ones that used to get destroyed by autocorrect. Now they can flow freely onto paper, be perfectly captured, cleaned up, and digitized in seconds.
Right.
So if AI can now effortlessly decipher and digitize even our messiest, most chaotic handwriting, could this spark a massive cultural revival of handwritten journals and letters?
Oh, wow. That's a fascinating thought.
Right. For years, people have hesitated to keep physical journals because they are hard to search and, well, easily lost or damaged.
They aren't backed up to the cloud.
Exactly. But knowing that our private, handwritten scrawls can instantly be transformed into a permanent, searchable, indestructible digital legacy for our families, might the pen finally conquer the keyboard?
It really might.
It's definitely something to mull over the next time you instinctively reach for a screen instead of a notebook. Let your thoughts flow. Until next time.